Homeland Security's cleanup battalions have just been unleashed, and armed migrants are already being shot dead in the streets.
Well, the police chief in Washington, D.C. says that her department is going to be increasing cooperation with immigration agents.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when, we're going in.
Trump's cleanup battalions aren't a rumor or a threat anymore. They're literally rolling up in your rear view. DHS checkpoints just dropped in nightlife zones. Traffic stops turn into immigration sweeps. And depending on who you ask, it's either about making DC safer or about weaponizing the streets against migrants. As activists rally and no deportation signs go up, raids scale, tensions spike, and viral clips hint at something uglier. Armed crews testing federal lines, shots fired, bodies on pavement. Trump's crackdown escalated like never before just over the last week. So who survives the next step when Washington, D.C. becomes the blueprint for Chicago, New York, and beyond? They set it up where people go to forget the day, outside nightclubs and bars. When the barricades went up and agents stepped in, the vibe shifted from a regular night out to full-on federal control within seconds. Needless to say, that angered people on both sides.
Last night, protesters confronting police and Homeland Security agents at a new checkpoint in a popular nightlife spot in D.C.
The city's top cop had already said the quiet part out loud.
Well, the police chief in Washington, D.C. says that her department is going to be increasing cooperation with immigration agents.
And now, the how is brutally simple. If a traffic stop brushes up against someone without papers, the handoff is greenlit. ICE isn't a specter anymore. It's a number on speed dial and a set of cuffs in the glove box.
Local police and Homeland Security agents were stopping cars at a busy intersection.
Here's the thing. On paper, the traffic stops are still made to, quote, control crime in DC. But what's really happening is this.
All along, the official word has been that this is all about the issue of crime in the District of Columbia. Now, if they are making traffic stops and they come across an undocumented person, they are allowed to report that person to federal officials, including ICE.
Agents don't need to go hunting warrants at 2 a.m. because federal code already did the heavy lifting. Section 287 gives them the teeth to bite fast.
Section 287 of the Immigration and Nationality Act provides that ICE officers have the authority to arrest aliens without a judicial warrant.
On the sidewalk, activists push back with red cards and slogans. They're fighting in the names of those too scared to be out, too. And they promise their neighbors their block won't be a deportation zone.
You can see there is a new sign posted saying no deportations in Mount Pleasant.
But by afternoon, those signs are yanked off public fixtures, the video of it detonating across group chats like a flare.
New surveillance video shows the moments where it appears to be federal agents tearing down a sign in Lamont Park in Mount Pleasant.
For them to come here and try to do that as some sort of FU to the neighborhood is gross. It's disgusting.
Every arrest scene becomes theater. Reporters pushed back from the line. The public fed nothing but a stand by while a man is loaded away and the crowd chants rights in Spanish.
It was just before 11 a.m. in Columbia Heights.
¿Qué motivo te dieron?
A food delivery driver is put in handcuffs by several federal agents. I asked the man what reason he was given for his arrest. He responds, "They're taking me away." Neighbors reminding the man that he has the right to remain silent.
So, the sanctuary dream collides with the law book, and it isn't pretty. Some residents say crime's down, others point to carjackings and smash and grabs in broad daylight, and both sides swear the other is delusional.
Hear from city leaders and others that crime is actually down. Are you seeing that?
No, I'm not seeing it. We're seeing carjackings, the violence in the communities. So we were advocating then for the National Guard to come out, but they said there was no need.
Trump's TV allies push non-stop footage of shoplifters and neighbors saying they finally feel safe again. Protesters push back with their own videos, showing what safety really looks like. DHS and ICE shoving people to the ground, beating anyone who resists, and in some cases, armed migrants getting shot in the street.
Honestly, I was disgusted, but not surprised at this point. These people are Trump's thugs.
People on both sides can agree on something though. Checkpoint Zero is just a test run, and the second officials saw it play out. The next step hit paper, a memo that changed how DC police talk to ICE. Wait till you see how fast that flipped the streets. The memo landed like a quiet bomb. Overnight, the rule that once banned local cops from sharing information with ICE agents was rewritten into permission or encouragement to hand it over.
This arrest happening hours after DC Police Chief Pamela Smith issued an order that allows for the partial cooperation between her officers and federal immigration officials.
Now, a simple traffic stop could snowball into an ICE investigation in under 24 hours. That made ICE's work much easier, as they didn't even have to patrol the streets or listen for anonymous tips anymore. The local cops were doing the heavy lifting for them. The activists called it betrayal.
Western Washington saw its own rallies and marches as people demanded protections for Medicaid and Social Security and an end to immigration raids.
They said the district had built its reputation as a sanctuary city on the promise that police wouldn't act as an arm of federal immigration. Now, the red cards they were passing out on sidewalks suddenly mattered less if a cop could just share your info upstream anyway. And the worst part? That memo set off a chain reaction. Every new arrest fed ICE more leads, and every lead justified bringing in bigger guns. What started as cooperation snowballed into Homeland Security's cleanup battalions, because once the streets turned hostile, the feds claimed only a show of force could finish the job. That's when the flood started. It wasn't just ICE anymore. Trump's mandate made what his people called cleanup battalions, a coalition of MPD, ICE, FBI, DEA, and even National Guard units moving as one. In DC, that looked like convoys moving in tight formation, mixing local cruisers with federal SUVs, checkpoints popping up in clusters, and teams of agents sweeping entire blocks in the middle of the day. Residents described it as a military occupation.
I think what's happening right now is that we're seeing an introduction of, or a teasing of, a police state. I think this is largely symbolic, but I think the greater implications will be in the unfortunate event that we have a national security issue, that our National Guard won't be able to respond properly because they, like our law enforcement personnel, are stretched very thinly at the moment.
Some experts say there's a danger in doing this. Supporters of the move claimed it was finally restoring order to neighborhoods they said had been taken over by gangs and repeat offenders. They pointed to arrests of armed felons and fugitives with multiple deportations on their record. But the battalions didn't just target immigration. They're going after drugs, weapons, and outstanding warrants, so no one really knows who might be next. That was the point, to create fear wide enough to make every community think twice. But fear cuts both ways. And the deeper these battalions pushed into neighborhoods, the more violent the pushback became. One case in DC summed up the whole fight. If the battalions couldn't touch a known felon right next to Congress, what did law and order even mean? ICE agents knew exactly who he was. A man deported 4 times, back again, with a record stacked full of felonies. They tracked him working as a gardener on Capitol Hill. To them, it was almost like a taunt, like he knew this.
So we, with ICE, have been trying to arrest the individual. We are not allowed to go on Capitol Hill to make an arrest. We've been told that we're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, federal officers were told Capitol grounds were off limits, even if it meant a violent felon could keep clocking in next to America's lawmakers. To agents, it was maddening. Proof that sanctuary carve-outs weren't just about neighborhoods anymore, but about political turf, where the rules bend. And every time he slipped through their grip, it only hardened the argument. If ICE can't make an arrest near Congress, then why not flood every sanctuary city until there are no safe zones left? Labor Day weekend should have been parades and cookouts. Instead, protests filled streets across Washington state, workers chanting against ICE raids, waving signs that read, "Workers over billionaires."
Workers should be more powerful than the small billionaire class. Workers above billionaires is our message today.
And denouncing Trump's policies.
No fear! They filled the streets with their banners, signboards, and chants.
We want Medicaid!
Not another ICE raid! Pushing a message that America's priorities have become misplaced.
But while protesters demanded fairer taxes and less Homeland Security violence, another story broke through the noise. 8 people dead, 58 wounded in Chicago shootings that same weekend.
A deadly Labor Day weekend in Chicago as President Trump continues to set his eye on the city, threatening to send in the National Guard as early as this week. At least 52 people have been shot in Chicago over the Labor Day weekend. 7 of those victims died.
Yeah, Trump seized on the chaos instantly, branding Chicago the most dangerous city in the world and warning that troops were coming.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when, we're going in.
To some, it was proof he was answering calls for help, like that of Chicago Alderman Pat Dowell, saying they've long asked for additional police manpower to deal with large illegal gatherings. To others, it was proof that Trump was turning tragedy into more political theater and battalions aimed at migrants more than criminals. And then came Tom Homan, the former ICE director, vowing to flood the zone in Chicago and other blue sanctuaries, boasting that battalions could lock down entire cities if mayors wouldn't cooperate.
Got a lot more work to do. President Trump is committed. We're going to focus on sanctuary cities. That's what we're going to prioritize because we know we have a problem there. So there is going to be, as I said several weeks ago, we're going to flood the zone in sanctuary cities like Chicago, like Los Angeles, like San Francisco, New York.
Now, the stakes are higher than ever, the fear is bigger than before, and so is the divide. Outside Homeland Security officers, there are groups of protesters pretty much in every city, but some residents say they'd rather see soldiers than random shooters on their street.
And I asked one mom who was walking her baby and her dog today what she would think of soldiers on the street corners of Chicago.
It will be feeling like uncomfortable. Yeah, because I've never seen a soldier on the street. But if I need to choose someone like on the with a hand like a gun, or you need to see the soldier, I don't have a choice. I need to choose a soldier because that random person can kill me.
But wait until you see what happens when threats turn to action and these cleanup battalions actually hit the ground. The battalions brought more arrests and more chaos, but they also dragged evidence into broad daylight. Within a matter of days, truckloads of mopeds were seized from street crews, as well as pistols, with illegal switches, turning them fully automatic.
We seized pistols that had what they call switch in the pistol, which made that pistol fully automatic. We arrested 7 or 9 child predators who children. We arrested 9 members of Tren de Agua, a terrorist organization, gangs.
To law and order voices, this was the payoff. Only federal muscle could break this loop. But look down the same block, and you see a different story. Dollar Tree shuttered, CVS gone, mom and pop stores closing under the weight of constant sweeps. Parents asked why their kids couldn't buy milk without passing armored trucks.
It's about control. It's about threatening diverse, successful, democratic-led cities like Chicago that refuse to bow down to authoritarianism.
It's easy to see how the gap between these two realities keeps widening. That's why the battalions weren't just about cleaning up one city. They were test marketing fear. If enough residents sided with safety, then bringing in even more federal forces would be framed as the only rational next step. And that's exactly what Trump is unleashing right now. By the time DC felt occupied, Chicago was already bracing. Now, Chicago students are speaking about the fear they feel, bracing for a violent raid. Some have stopped going to school altogether.
I have no idea what it's going to mean. I have no idea if there will be tanks in the neighborhoods tomorrow. I have no idea if people are going to show up and with rifles, strapped to their back. See, that's the thing about this right now that is terrible to lead, is because you have no idea, because you would have never thought. Because how in the hell is this happening?
Yesterday, NPR confirmed it wasn't just Chicago. Baltimore was on the list too, as the president promised to direct federal law enforcement interventions into cities where mayors openly rejected him.
President Trump says he'll direct federal law enforcement intervention into Baltimore and Chicago. But the mayors of the cities say they don't want federal intervention. Trump has already sent National Guard troops into Los Angeles and has kept them in Washington, D.C.
And on top of that, judges started warning he was building a national police force with the president as its chief. Local leaders hit back hard. Senator Dick Durbin called it an authoritarian power grab.
This escalation is not about public safety or about law and order. It's an authoritarian power grab that has profound consequences, that seeks to target and profile working class immigrant and brown communities.
Yet others, like Cook County commissioners, countered that most parents and workers actually supported federal troops on their corners. Most citizens want safe communities. This should not be controversial, so no matter which side you're standing on, the reality is the same. Crime and carnage are peaking, and battalions in the streets are raising the stakes higher than anyone imagined. If they stay, America gets used to living under federal boots. If they spread, whole cities could flip overnight into militarized zones. And if they clash harder with armed crews, the next headline might show open war on American streets.